Okay, let's unpack this. It is February 12th, 2026. And usually when we sit down to do a deep dive, we've got this huge stack of papers in front of us.
Yeah.
We've got corporate reports, academic journals, press releases from some big tech firm trying to sell us on the next big thing.
It can get a little heavy, a little corporate.
Exactly. But today's different. We are looking at a piece of writing that was published, well, depending on when you're listening, literally hours ago. And it's not from a corporation. It's from a person.
It's a blog post.
A blog post from a personal website, kianmeng.org. The author is a developer named Ang. And right off the bat, before we even get into the code, and we are getting into the code, I have to talk about his bio. He doesn't call himself a senior cloud architect or something.
No, none of that LinkedIn fluff.
He calls himself an old software plumber.
Old software plumber. I love that. It immediately sets a tone, doesn't it?
It does. It feels honest, really grounded.
Well, think about what a plumber does. An architect draws these pretty lines on a blueprint. A plumber. A plumber's under the sink, dealing with the leaks, the pressure, the messy reality of the system.
And if the plumbing doesn't work, it doesn't matter how pretty the house is.
Precisely. So when a software plumber writes something, you know it's not going to be some abstract theory. It's going to be about fixing a leak. It's about the tool chain. And that is exactly what this is. We're looking at Notes on Haskell Programming, Part 56, enabling extensions at the project level.
Part 56, that alone implies a long, long journey.
Or a long relationship with the language.
Fair point. So our mission today is, I guess, threefold. First, we're going to unpack this specific Haskell efficiency thing. Second, we'll look at the philosophy of tool chains, why we configure things this way. And finally, we're going to do a little detective work on Ang himself, because that sidebar on his blog.
Oh, the sidebar is a whole rabbit hole. We're definitely going there.
Right.
But yeah, let's start with the pipe fitting. Let's start with the code.
So he starts with a little bit of a flashback. He mentions this is a follow-up to something from Part 52.
Right. So to get Part 56, you sort of have to understand the headache of Part 52.
Okay, lay it out for us. For someone who doesn't code in Haskell, what was the struggle?
So Haskell is what we call a functional language. It's incredibly strict, mathematically pure, and very safe. But because it's so strict, the default language sometimes doesn't let you do certain, fancy things you might want to do.
So it's a bit of a straitjacket by default. For safety.
For safety, yes. And to do those fancy things, you need to turn on language extensions. Think of them like cheat codes for a video game. You're telling the compiler, hey, I know this isn't normally allowed, but for this file, just let me do this cool trick.
Okay, so you need to enable these mods to get your work done. What was the problem?
The problem was where he was enabling them. In Part 52, he was doing it at the file level. That means at the very top of every single source code file, he had to paste this special command.
That sounds tedious.
It is incredibly tedious. Imagine you're writing a novel, and at the top of every single page, you have to manually write, note, I am using metaphors on this page.
And if you forget to write it?
The page doesn't print. The compiler just throws an error. Your code's broken.
Wow. Okay. I can see why he calls himself a plumber now. That feels like tightening the same nut on 100 pipes every single morning.
Exactly. And he says it himself. He says it's cumbersome, which is, the polite programmer way of saying this is driving me nuts. It's a leaky process. You're going to forget one.
So today, February 12th, he's working on his pet Haskell project, and he finds a better wrench.
He finds the project level switch.
Package.yaml.
That's the one. Package.yaml. It's a configuration file for the whole project. So instead of telling every individual file what rules to follow, you just define them once, globally. You say, in this house, we use these extensions, and that's it.
It seems so obvious, though. Why wasn't he doing this from the start?
Well, that's the plumber mindset, right? Sometimes you get so used to fixing the leak with duct tape, the quick local fix, that you forget you can just replace the main supply line. It's a maturity thing. You move from local fixes to a global configuration. You fix the environment itself.
I want to zoom in on the specific config he used, because this is where it gets a little crunchy. He shares a snippet, and there's a line. Language. GHC 2024.
Yes, this is big. This is really significant.
GHC 2024. Sound like a sci-fi convention.
It sort of is. It stands for the Glasgow Haskell Compiler version 2024. But it's not just a version number. It's a language standard.
Explain that.
Programming languages evolve, right? What was experimental 5 years ago becomes best practice. GHC 2024 is the Haskell community basically saying, okay, these specific tools, they're now safe, standard, and robust. Everyone should have them out of the box.
And he lists a few of these tools that come included. He mentions Lambda case, GADTs, data kinds, and deriving strategies.
The four horsemen of modern Haskell, basically.
Okay, we can't just gloss over those. Give me the explain like I'm 5 version.
Yeah.
If I get the GHC 2024 box, what is a GADT?
Okay, rapid fire. Lambda case is just convenience. It's syntactic sugar. It makes your code shorter when you're checking different possibilities.
Check. Cleaner code. What about data kinds?
Data kinds is a bit trippy. It lets you use your data at the type level, which makes the compiler incredibly strict. It's like putting a shape sorter toy in front of your code squares, only go in square holes. The program won't even start if you try to do it wrong. It catches bugs before they can even exist.
Okay, so it's hyper safety and GADTs.
Generalized algebraic data types. That mouthful just extends that same idea. It gives you very, very precise control over your data structures. It's heavy-duty mathematical plumbing.
And deriving strategies.
That's just automation. It's you telling the compiler, hey, write this boring code for me. It figures out the best way to do it so you don't have to.
So GHC 2024 is basically the premium package. It automates the boring stuff and gives you safer, more powerful tools by default.
Exactly. And the fact that these are default now tells you how far the language has come. A few years ago, you had to ask for these, prove you knew what you were doing.
But, and here's the twist, even with the premium package, Ang wasn't satisfied.
The job still wasn't quite done. The plumber needed one more specific tool.
He says, however, one extension is missing, and that extension is OverloadedRecordDot.
Ah, yes, the dot.
It sounds so simple, the dot. Why does he have to go in and manually add this one thing? What does it even do?
This is a huge quality of life feature, especially if you come from other languages. In Python or Java, if you have a user object, you get the name by writing user.name.
Right, dot notation. That's everywhere.
Haskell, historically, didn't do that. It had this much more awkward, clunky way of getting data out of records. OverloadedRecordDot finally lets Haskell programmers use that familiar user.d.t.name syntax.
So he's manually adding a feature to make Haskell feel a bit more like every other language.
Exactly, and it just highlights the precision of the software plumber. You can have the latest 2024 toolkit, but if your specific workflow relies on that dot syntax, you still have to get under the sink and tighten that one specific nut yourself.
Speaking of the rest of the world, this leads to the part of the post that made me stop and reread. Because he makes a comparison that I feel like might offend some people.
The PHP comparison. I know exactly what you mean.
Yes. He writes, quote, PHP is the only other programming language I recall with similar feature.
It's a bold move. Comparing Haskell, this pure mathematical ivory tower language, to PHP, which is, let's be charitable and call it the messy workhorse of the web.
It's like comparing a particle accelerator to a pickup truck.
It is, but he's onto something really profound here. He's comparing how they both handle extensions, but then he immediately draws a critical distinction.
He does. He says in PHP, extensions usually just mean you're integrating external libraries.
Right. In PHP, an extension usually means adding a new capability. You're plugging a new appliance into the wall. You're not changing the house, you're just bringing in a toaster to make toast.
But in Haskell, he says, extensions are designed to modify compiler behavior or introduce new syntax.
And that's the aha moment. In Haskell, when you enable an extension, you aren't just adding a library, you are changing the grammar of the language itself.
You're changing the rules of the universe inside your code.
Yes, you're telling the compiler, I want you to understand a different dialect of Haskell. You're not just bringing in a toaster, you're actually moving the walls of the kitchen.
That's a fascinating distinction. And it brings us right back to the plumber idea. A plumber doesn't just use the faucet. If the pressure isn't right, they change the pipe diameter. They change the actual flow.
It shows a level of control over the tool that most developers just don't think about. We usually accept the language as is. Ang looks at it and says, no, I want it to work this way. He's programming the language, not just in the language.
So we've established he's meticulous, he likes to tinker. But this is where the deep dive takes a turn. Because I started clicking around his site.
Always click the sidebar. That's rule number 1.
I looked at his projects list and the recent posts, and I realized this guy isn't just a coder.
Not even close.
So we're looking at notes on Haskell Programming, card 56. Impressive. But then I saw notes on gardening. Do you want to guess what part number he is on for gardening?
I saw this. It's honestly staggering.
Part 805.
805.
Notes on gardening, part 805. The graceful sway. He has written over 800 entries about his garden.
That is dedication that borders on obsession, in the absolute best way.
And it's not just gardening. For February 2026 alone, we have Notes on Fish Keeping, Part 195, Relocating My Jewel Cichlid.
His jewel cichlid? So specific.
We have notes on photography, notes on guitar, notes on typesetting, notes on dieting, notes on meditation.
It's a complete ecosystem. It paints a picture of a true polymath.
It really does. So my question is there a connection here? Is notes on Haskell the same thing as notes on fish keeping?
I think they are exactly the same thing. Look at the titles. They're all notes on.
Oh.
So it implies a single methodology. He's applying the same learning algorithm to everything in his life. Think about it. Whether he is configuring package.yam to optimize a compiler or figuring out, his red pineapple plants, he's observing, testing, tinkering, and documenting.
He's debugging. He's debugging his plants.
He's debugging reality. He's a life plumber. You don't get to part 805 of anything without a scientific mindset. You try something, it fails. You write a note about it. You try again. Part 56 of Haskell is just the latest iteration of his understanding.
It really challenges that old stereotype of developer who just sits in a dark room and eats pizza, doesn't it?
Completely. This is a Renaissance man with a keyboard and a garden trowel.
And the sheer volume. It's February 12th. I'm counting. 36 posts just for this month so far.
He's posting multiple times a day.
He's doing more than one deep dive a day. It really is a digital garden, constantly growing, constantly being pruned.
And it's important to note who he's doing this for.
The disclaimer says, opinions expressed here are my own.
Right. But look at the do support list in the sidebar. That tells you a lot about his values. He lists the Electronic Frontier Foundation, the Free Software Foundation, the Tor Project, and Wikipedia.
The 4 pillars of the open web.
Exactly. This reinforces that floss mentioned in his bio-free and Libre open source software. He believes in open knowledge. He believes in sharing the plumbing instructions.
He's not putting his 805 gardening tips behind a paywall.
No. He's not putting his Haskell tips on a site that bombards you with ads. He's just putting them out there for the interweb, as he puts it.
Dear interweb. I love that. It felt so 2005, in the best way. Like the internet is still a community, not just an algorithm.
And that's why a source like this is so refreshing. In an era where so much of the internet feels like walled gardens and AI-generated slop, qianmeng.org is a human artifact. It's a library of one person's actual lived experience.
It makes you realize the value of owning your own platform. If you posted all this on Twitter or Reddit 10 years ago,
it'd be gone.
Yeah.
Buried. Impossible to find.
But here, it's part 805. It's a searchable history. It's a testament to long-term memory.
It really makes you think about where we put our own notes. Are we building a garden or are we just shouting into the void?
That is the question. So let's wrap this up. We started with a piece of code about file headers and ended up with a philosophy of life.
The best deep dives always do.
On the technical side, the takeaway is pretty clear. If you are a Haskell developer listening to this, stop pasting headers in every file.
Please. Use package.yaml, centralize your extensions, and if you're brave, switch to GHC 2024.
But on the human side, the takeaway is a bit broader.
It's that notes on mindset.
I keep thinking about that PHP comparison, the idea that we can change the compiler's behavior. And it made me wonder, at what point does programming in Haskell become programming Haskell itself?
That is a deep question. It blurs the line between user and creator. When you start modifying the grammar of the language you're speaking, you're not just a user anymore. You become a co-creator.
And for those of us who aren't writing code, maybe we're just gardening or keeping fish.
The question is, are you writing it down?
Right. Do you have a topic, anything in your life that you could write 805 parts about?
And if you do, why aren't you writing part 1 today?
Start your garden, whether it's digital or actual soil.
Start your garden.
Big thanks to the old software plumber Aang for the code and the inspiration today. And thank you for listening to this deep dive.
It was a pleasure.
We'll catch you on the next one. Bye.